Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the MedTech Business Academy podcast, hosted by your MedTeXperts. We're excited here at the end of May 2024. There's a lot of 20s, 2024, to introduce a really hot topic that I feel like, although when we say the words, it's going to sound something that we should all know and probably something that we're all going to say, yeah, fundamentally, I'm guessing everybody does that. But what we can tell you is as a panel and having worked with the wide array of various MedTech, Pharma tech, and Biotech companies that we work with, very few companies actually exercise this and engage in this exercise. And what we're talking about is a landscape assessment. Yes, the landscape assessment. So for those of you that are starting to wonder what a landscape assessment is and why you need it if you've never done it, and if you have done it, why you've probably done it wrong, we've got the expert. And today we're going to introduce everybody to Rob Ferguson, who is a partner at Excelerant Consulting and a vaunted leader in the space of telling people things that they don't know, but that they should know. So welcome to another episode of the MedTech Business Academy. All right, Rob, welcome to the platform, Rob. We're excited to have you on. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Skinner. It's great to be on.
Absolutely. So let's start off with the fundamentals, just the basic question 101. Define for our audience what a landscape assessment is.
It's a very good question, and it's a very deep question to most businesses, and it's basically looking like, from the analogy of sports, it's like having the playbook for your games. It's understanding how you're going to carry out each fundamental task and know that you've made the right decision because you've gone through and looked at all the data that helps support it for the validation. And so landscape assessment is truly the playbook. It's the driving point. It's the validation to move you forward to go to a value assessment, then on to commercialization.
So I love sports analogies more than anybody, and I appreciate them. Now, tell us what's involved in a landscape assessment as far as it relates to kind of the MedTech community.
Wow. It's very comprehensive. And that's exactly what we practice at Excelerant, is that as we look not only at the market, but at the competition, including the pricing, but a little bit of the details that we look at is, we'll go and assess the market CAGRs, what's driving the market, the segmentation, and also the opportunities. What we will next do is look at the impression in the market, what's happening globally, what's happening regionally, not only the product type and the design composition, but the end use and the average pricing. It would include a lot of companies are paid around reimbursement. So we'll look at the reimbursement scenario. We'll look at what the political impacts of the new bills being passed or in Congress that could have impact on it. And along with the regulatory guidelines and the technology review. Another part.
Go ahead. Finish, please.
Yeah, another part of it is the macroeconomic indicators, and the market drivers, supply and demand, and the restraints. We'll a lot of times look at the particular year-over-year growth, what's driving it, what the competition's doing, how it competes with products they currently have in the market, and also what they're projecting to come out with. And then we'll a lot of times look at the end user, the voice of the customer, as you're near and dear to, is one of the key elements in going in this type of assessment.
So this is way more than just a playbook, right? A playbook is X's and O's telling you where you're going to go, how you're going to run things on your side. This is as much an analysis on what's happening on the other side. So I just got to ask a question. It sounds like, Willy Wonka's golden ticket. What do you charge for this? Like $10 billion? I mean, I'm just curious, like, is this, every company has to engage for this, right? In some way?
You would hope so. Some companies have really got a lot of the data already, some don't. And even with the data they may have already, the question is it current? Also, too, is the data that they've been able to gather, was it from valid sources, credible sources, that you're able to make a determination, also a decision that it was in line with what your thinking was, or what your research was around.
So, Rob, before we started, I said, in my opinion, it's fundamentally stupid if people don't do this, right? This should be step one of, hey, I have an idea. Hey, this is something I want to do. Wouldn't it be really important to understand the landscape? And I think it would be negligence not to do it, number one. Number two is, I would also imagine that, Skender talked about the cost, which, by the way, you very politically didn't answer that question. So my question is just a range, and I'm going to give you a chance to answer this two ways. So what's the cost of doing it roughly, and what's the cost of not doing it?
Yeah, well, that's a very valid, not only point, but question. The cost of it depends on what the ask is. What information do you need to know? If it's a very comprehensive, similar to what some of the things I just described, it could be as much as $40,000, or it can be as less as $10,000. And that includes a report, and a comprehensive report of the findings.
Yeah, and again, I think that's money well spent. I don't think if you can afford $40,000, maybe you shouldn't really be thinking about going into the med device space, because it's going to cost you a heck of a lot of money to commercialize a product, number one. Number two is, it would also help, obviously, if you do come up with a good report that, it's in line with what the company was thinking. It would be good for a fundraising effort, you would think. And again, so the second part of the question is, what's the cost of not doing it?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I have actually spoken to companies where we had investors, private equity firms, that have come back to us only because the company decided to pull the trigger, go commercialize, without having the proper data. And they are 5 years later into this, still funding it, not making any money, and they've already spent millions of dollars without really doing their due diligence up front.
You said a key thing just a minute ago. You talked about, when you ask and how you ask the questions, because Rob and I do occasionally work together on this sort of thing, because I need the information he comes up with to do a lot of the stuff I do. And sometimes it's the questions you ask, but mostly the questions you don't ask.
That's
so
exactly right.
What is sort of the mystical powers to understand what to ask? Is there like a minimum set of things you should ask just to get started?
Oh, yeah, that's part of the screening process to find out what they have. Is it in line with what the type of reporting we provide is? But the fundamental questions is, what do they know currently about a lot of the types of things I just brought up? But if they understand their market, if they understand if it's a regional market, if it's a U.S. market, if it's a global market, what do they know about it today? And of course, it's going to be a data find. We typically ask for them to send what they have to us. And so we can assess and determine if that information is in line with our thinking, but also if it's credible and if it's current, because we will do a comparison with that. So there's a lot of questions around this that are very comprehensive in nature, but it's a very simple ask about the market and also their competition and pricing. Those are the three fundamental areas.
What kind of data would the company already have?
What's that?
You referenced the data the company may have. Can you expound upon?
You ask a great question. Many times what you'll find is companies try to take shortcuts. They'll, for example, go to Google and Google a question, and all of a sudden up shows about 5 or 6 different sources with 5 or 6 different answers. And so they choose one to go with and use that as the holy grail of how they determine their business. We take a little bit more of a comprehensive approach where we go to many sources and very valid sources to be able to look at the same thing, but very in depth and determine what seems to be the realization of the numbers, but also the accuracy of the data. So that is that's a very important step, not to just take what's thrown out there at you, but make sure you dive hard into it to find out the value and the validation of that information.
So, Rob, people are obviously going to commercialize or want to commercialize products that they're bringing a competitive advantage, right? They're going to bring something to the market that's going to benefit the market that it's not experiencing right now. How much of that competitive advantage do you dive into in a landscape to make sure that, the competitive advantage that I think I have, I really have?
Yeah, we take a very comprehensive look on that. Matter of fact, I work real close with Barbara on things like that, on particular companies. I think an example, Barbara, you may smile about this, is that we were working with a company and we recognized after compiling the data, we recognized that there was areas that they were not given the appreciation that potentially could be competitors. And of course, after multiple discussions, it still was determined by the client that they weren't competitors. Well, end of the game, about 6 months, the client decided they were competitors. So we were able to identify that up front and at least bring it to the forefront for them to recognize, but also plan around. And so it wasn't too late, but it was something that they did have on their radar, and we were able to address it up front. As far as the competitive information, we really do look at the financials of a competitor. We look at really who the top 5, depends on the type of product and market. We find out a little bit more of what they're forecasting, what they're predicting, what they're addressing. Case in point is there was a company that was a leader in sleep medicine, in diagnostics, that was out there. And in the prior company we were with, we were looking at, was this company going to still be around? Because their price points were down, their market penetration was sliding, but they were the largest player in the market. Well, guess what? Today they're out of business in that particular industry. And so it warranted itself to say that the measure we took was spot on, and we were able to determine that then. So we take that same approach with what we do here.
Rob, I'd like to jump in. A lot of what I do with early stage companies is help them build a sales team. And I'm wondering, from your perspective with a market access, how can that prepare a sales team for launching a new product? Because they're all talking about, gee, I can't get in front of customers, or if I do, it takes forever. If they do some market access, what are they likely to see in terms of helping through that commercialization, especially in the early days? Do you have any thoughts for us there?
Yeah, and that's exactly what a lot of this data will allow you to do is better preparation, especially for the sales team, which is near and dear to my heart, because we all realize you can have a business, but if you don't have a good sales organization, you're really going to suffer until you improve upon that. And what you provide to them in the tools of trade, but also the knowledge to be able to represent their product and be able to express that to the customer and show where the outcomes are going to be improved. And the pricing is also in line with what the caregivers are looking for. That's going to be the critical information a salesperson should be receiving. The collateral is going to be reflective of that. Any kind of marketing would be reflective of it as well. But with the sales reps, of course, we talk about an elevator pitch. And so it's going to be important that we hit the priority of data points up front to show the customer we have done our homework. This is a great product, and the sales rep can carry that forward.
So
Rob,
one
what
of the
kind of-
things that's really important is timing is everything. And it sounds like this should really be done way up front. But should it be sort of tempered or looked at mid-course or later or revisited at any time? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, it's like checking the boxes, right? It's a process, but also it's an exercise that as you go through this and you determine the various areas. For example, we can look at the end users from a voice of the customer feedback and determine that this sampling of the end users are going, well, this is what's important to us. To find out if this market also covers, if this product covers other markets, does it address what these other markets are needing too? So it's going to be important that the target markets that this product is designed for, that type of feature set is set up for and also designed around. And so as you go through that process, it's going to be important to look at how the product is designed, its ability. A lot of times, if you're working with the government, there may be a product introduced that seems to address those concerns, but are not approved through the FDA and become a bit dated for what the current market has. And so it's going to be important to bring that type of product along and be able to understand that, so that when you stop to reevaluate, that it's still in line with the way of thinking, because some products take years to get through the FDA.
So here's my question, and I'm going to ask the panel. This is a true or false question. Rob has already established that this doesn't cost $10 billion, despite the fact that you get all of your plays and you get all the plays of the other team, and you get to look at exactly what the referees are thinking and what the crowd noise is going to be like and what the weather's like, et cetera. He's basically giving you everything. So for the fact that you got to invest a few $1,000s, true or false, every entrepreneur in the world in MedTech is clamoring down Rob's door right now, asking for this. What do we think? Barbara, true or false?
False.
Tom?
False.
Mike?
False.
I got to say true, because the information points tell me it has to be true. Everybody has to be looking for this, especially if you're an early stage entrepreneur. Rob, tell us the answer.
Wow. That was a loaded one, Skinner.
Is it true or false?
Are they looking for it? False. And I say that because, again, I go back to my earlier comment around many times a company will get involved with a product to find out they have a finished product and an approved product, and they will go to, for example, a meeting, and where they have their targeted market there, the people will come by without any kind of sampling outside of that, any comprehensive, and they'll determine that people showed interest in it, therefore they've now surpassed this whole process. And they believe that it's ready for commercialization. So they choose, if they had any budget for it, it's not going to no longer be allocated to that. It will go forward towards the commercialization. And it's amazing how many times I often talk to a company that will do exactly that. That they will have a product that seems to appeal to whatever market it was at a meeting, and they'll determine their business going forward by that.
Rob, are you suggesting that some entrepreneurs are subject to confirmation bias?
I was wondering when that was going to come up.
I will say that they're very impressed with seeing a product that seems to fit their needs, but they don't know if it does. And by understanding the market, it really, a customer is the one who's going to help drive this. The outcomes is going to speak for itself. But the reality is how long you're going to be able to survive the company and grow it forward.
So, one of the things about this true or false question that I was thinking about is how much of the issue is just awareness, that people don't know that this service is available.
Good point.
Which is great that you're doing it, like a podcast like this and getting the word out, because I think awareness is probably a big reason, because any entrepreneur, again, that can't afford $40,000 either needs to raise that money or needs to go find something else to do, because it's just, again, it's just negligence not to understand the game that you're playing and the rules of the game and your competitors and all that other stuff. But my question is, in this report that I would get, do I get recommendations, or is it just, here's the facts, Jack?
Yeah, that's again a valid point, is that we not only collect the data, along with Barbara and her working together with I, the recommendations are provided to the customer or to the client.
Excellent. And how many times do you do the report that people actually get the report and say, thank you very much, but I'm not going to enter this space? The $40,000 just saved me millions of dollars.
Well, that's the whole design intent, is that to, again, validate the purpose of moving forward with their product without spending not only their money, but also any kind of investors' money and mitigate the risk of doing so.
Yep.
Sometimes I think they might take it back to the lab, say, and do some more work on it, or tweak things, or then do a whole different marketing strategy or whatever. So those are really valid questions, Mike, that everybody in the audience needs to really think about. Is, okay, great, I'm going to get this report and I'm just going to Zoom, and it can be surprising, but you like to let the data stand on its own. But I think when we were sort of chatting before we went on air, Rob said two significant words for me as a provider, as well as a company that's trying to get on their feet, was risk mitigation. So what are the key risk mitigation points? And it kind of goes along with what Mike was trying to say.
I'm sorry, Barb, what are the two
key risk mitigation points? You said that this helps to, mitigate risk, and is for the company? Is it for, whomever?
Well, I mean, at the very end, of course, it's for the user. It's for the patient, for the outcomes, for the caregiver, and then again for the company. It really, when we're looking at risk, we got to make sure, number one, safety is in place, right? FDA's approved it. We'll also be able to look at the validation as compared to a competitor's. And so that's a very important step. But also, when we look at the risk, it goes back to some of the previous topics I was bringing up. The risk of a company or spending a lot of money, similar to what Skinner was bringing up, spending a lot of money to find out that the market wasn't there, or reimbursement is getting ready to be cut, or reimbursement is getting ready to go away. I have a past history of a company that had a product in the physical therapy market, and it was a major tool in that market that was highly reimbursed. Many physical therapy practices operated their gross revenues around what the reimbursement of this product was, to find out the whole reimbursement got cut away. How are you going to survive now? How are you going to treat your patients? Are you going to be able to use that product in treating your patients? And so it's that type of measure. It's got to take place in order to determine that. So there's the risk that I was referring to.
Has the report changed at all based on the labor shortages that are out in the space right now, and conversion, switching over from one technology to another? Is that a consideration at all?
Absolutely. Well, as everyone knows, COVID has really changed our lives, from the patient, but also to the caregiver and to the staffing and the efficiencies or the productivity it can create. And so that is a big focus of ours, is that this product is not just another Me Too, or even if it is, we'll be able to provide that feedback, and the determination of moving forward is obviously the clients, but that the product design is really that of today and moving forward. And we'd make suggestions depending on the type of product, but we'll make suggestions along those lines if we see an improvement that they possibly can make with it. The current market as it stands is demanding better technologies in many areas, especially in diagnostics and surgery. And we've been very fortunate to work with some companies in the past that really have focused on that. The speed to the market is critical, and that their design and their commercialization is in place before it starts to become a little bit more dated of a product, similar to what is happening with the FDA whenever there's submittal. Some companies expect it to be done in 2 or 3 months. Some expect it and will have experience of knowing it may be 6 months or greater.
So, Rob, I would like to maybe back up just a little bit with you, because we kind of touched on some of the price points, which actually seem pretty reasonable. But I'm wondering if when you work with an innovator, if there's 1 or 2 things you wished an innovator would do before they contacted you. Is there some things that they could have prepared up front to make this process maybe more fulfilling or perhaps more efficient, when you get engaged with them?
Yeah, and it's like anything else. If you're going to go out and buy a car, if you're going to buy a house, you have to make sure you have the right financing up front. You have to understand, and if you don't, then that needs to be something that's brought up front so they can plan for it and appreciate what exactly that means, but also what all that entails. So it's critical. As an investor, I would look at a company to find out what due diligence they have done in order to, one, improve my returns, but 2 is to reduce the risk of me in my investment. And so how quick can I get those returns back? And that type of data will help facilitate that.
Rob, what kind of resources do you tap into to provide this report?
All sorts of types of resources. And of course, it will go from similar to what I was speaking about earlier, is we will use sources across social media. We'll use sources across the various platforms. We will look within hospitals on treatment protocols, treatment numbers of types of treatment, the product being used by region, by state, by country. We will look at what seems to be the specialist, what they choose to use of a product, if it does require a specialist. So there's many areas and resources that we use for that type of information.
And what about for the guy or the gal that's saying to themselves, well, I could just buy one of those industry reports for $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I just buy that?
Yeah, and it's interesting whenever you look at these type of companies, because you can buy that. The question is it valid? How current is it? Has it been updated in the last 3 years or last 5 years? Are you willing to risk your business on that information alone? Is it providing you truly with your market in your space the information that is critical to you making the next step, not only in the design of the product, but also in the commercialization of it, to have the impact in the area that you're focused on? So the data sources, again, like anything else, can be a bit skewed, and you have to turn to sources that really have got the current information. And it's just not one, it's just not 2. There's many sources. So yes, you could go and buy one, but if you're willing to risk your business on just that one data source, then it may be a bit in question.
Great.
So, Rob, I'm wondering also, maybe at a high level, putting some of this together, if perhaps not naming names, but do you have a success story? Is there a one type of company you pointed to, or is it an example of somebody that used this and then turned it into a success? Do you have any thoughts for us there?
Yeah, there's a company. It's a mid-sized company, a mid-cap company that was or is in the embolic market, and they have competed in it. And there's off-label and on-label type of products that are out there with the FDA. And they have focused in on the giants who are in a particular market. And they said, okay, this is who we have to go head to head with. And so after a lot of the due diligence, after doing the value analysis along with Barbara, what we were able to determine is that the data provided is going to allow them a whole different angle to approach the market, to be an on-label. So with the on-label market, it really began to show its colors on not only on the commercialization, but the sales team that embraced it. First, they had a product that went to the office space. And so they chose to really lean towards the least path to resistance in selling that product. However, they began to embrace it. And this product has really taken off to the extent where it's now going into contracts and hospital groups are inviting it. So it was one of those fundamentals that they asked for that type of market information. We were able to determine that there were some better ways to address it by including the value analysis. Then, of course, the commercialization is taking place now.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that, Rob, might help people, even though they think they've done all their due diligence and they want to invest this money, do you think it's a way for them to at least validate that what they did was exactly what that said it was, even though they might not gain maybe one more thing?
Oh, absolutely. And it's like if you ever decide to go on vacation and you want to go on a trip and you have to fly, all of a sudden your plans on this trip change so much because the flight either got canceled or got changed, or there was a storm that hit. So there's so many moving parts to how you determine your strategy, but also your execution with that type of data and validation. And so, you know, in a very metaphoric way, I will tell you that it's so important that you take those steps to not only mitigate the risk, but also to validate the information that you have that is current, not again old data or changed data or older data that they may be basing their business decision on.
What is this vacation thing you speak of?
I hear in America that they take vacations like once a month. No. You know, I'm still looking for mine, right?
So, Rob, you know, you've worked for a number of organizations, both large and small, in this industry, and you're doing an amazing job in your consulting practice now. Is this something, because I always find when we're talking to our early stage innovators and leaders, you know, they're always wondering, hey, what do the big boys do if they don't come from there? Is this common practice in the enterprise organizations? And if so, how often are they engaging in something like this?
Yeah, quite often. Anytime they have a new product or scalable product, a new product to the market, just like any type of business venture that most people would take, hopefully, if you want to reduce the risk of point or going into the market, you've got to get your data. And these larger companies appreciate that. They've developed this around protocols and carrying it forward, similar to what I was mentioning a minute ago. The mid-cap company did exactly that. They did reach out to us, and it was a practice that they commonly make. And it was a product they chose to align or have a strategic partner with, and then bring to us for them to solidify a business plan with. So most of these larger companies that I've been with, that is part of the protocols.
So do you do landscape work in the U.S. only, or do you do landscape work outside the U.S.?
We do it inside the U.S. as well as outside the U.S., so globally.
Gotcha. And when you're talking about doing a landscape, would that be, whatever the fee is, would that be per region, per country? Like, how would that work?
And again, it depends on the ask, because we can do it any way they choose to look at it. Many times, especially being the U.S. market is one of the largest healthcare markets in the world, you'll find customers like to first choose an area. They'll ask us what seems to be the density of the population of using products or services similar to this. And of course, we can start off that way. Then, of course, go into the other areas that they're not currently covering or asking of the reporting. But yeah, we can cover whatever they choose in the way of priority.
And my last question is, as a landscaper, right, you do the initial landscape. What's the maintenance on something like this? How often should you check the landscape to make sure that it hasn't changed or to adapt to it?
Well, obviously, as we were discussing earlier, that you may have collected information conceptually or at a broad level to determine the concept of your product is something that the market seems to be wanting before you do any of the other due diligence. And also some of the data you've collected seems to help support it. But make sure that before you even start to spend funding, that you go and revisit that to make sure the information is updated. And during the process,
is there any benefit to post-commercialization?
Absolutely, because the market changes. And again, you're going to find that if sales are starting to be impacted, if you're having to wait for the sales to be impacted, you've waited too late in most cases. You're starting to lose revenues. But if you choose to make it a fundamental exercise, to do it at least, depending on the product, every 6 to 9 months, maybe 12, depending on the product, then you're going to be able to stay on top of where your market bears a type of product and price points is at.
Well, let's, Rob, you've imparted some incredible knowledge upon us. We're getting to the top of our time here. So I'm going to ask everybody to provide a little food for thought in summary, and we'll give you the last word on this, Rob. So Tom, why don't you start off?
Sure. Thanks, Skinder. And Rob, thank you. It was very insightful. Appreciate your information. And I was struck by, where you're using many cliches at the top of the show. And I'm struck by the old cliche of, ready, fire, aim. And a lot of innovators seem to get, fall into that trap. And I think a call to you would really help with, fine tuning, their aiming, so to speak, so they're on target. So I would highly recommend folks at least consult with you and find out what you could do to help.
Thank you.
Barbara?
Well, Rob, it's always great to work with you and to listen to you really expound on all the things that you've learned over time and keep learning. And I think one of the things that our listeners need to sort of grasp onto is try not to be surprised. And this is a great way to avoid those surprises and to really get out there. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Mike?
For me, it's simple. It's Rob, thank you very much. Now, everybody that's listening to this, Rob is available. This is the best money that you can spend if you're looking to commercialize. Give him a call because it'll absolutely just pave the way and the landscape for where you want to go. So thanks, Rob, for making this available to all of us, and keep promoting because people need you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to add another sports analogy in closing this out, quasi sports analogy. I may or may not have sat at a blackjack table once or twice in my life. And, you go to the blackjack table with so much, and if you're smart, you say, hey, this is the money I'm putting at risk. And if a dealer or a casino offered me the opportunity to pay a little bit more to see the dealer's next few cards, I would take it. I would spend it. And that's kind of what this is. That's kind of what the landscape assessment that I'm seeing it is you pay a few more dollars to get an opportunity to get a peek at what those next cards coming at you that you're playing against are. And why everybody in our cohort isn't investing the time, money, effort, resources to do this type of assessment and see those extra few cards before they come out and get an assessment of your true risk is befuddling to me. But knowing that now that a resource like Rob is out there to help provide some guidance, hopefully people will start paying attention, Rob. And I hope you take that casino for everything it's worth.
Well, thank you, Skinner and panel. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I must say this is that I've had my own companies for many years in medical device, in various areas of medicine. And this is a practice that we made. I've been very fortunate over the years to see some of them continue on and be able to sell them, get my multiples out of them, but also work for great corporations. And the playbook in which we're talking about is so important to all companies. And don't take it at first pass. Make sure that you're on top of this, because this is exactly how you succeed and you create a roadmap to success. And the last thing I want to say, don't make it the house of cards. So Skinner, to your analogy, I can appreciate that.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Stay tuned for our next episode. We take out all the card sharks and tell everybody how to count. So, Rob, thanks again for your time. To our panel, thank you as well. To our audience, we appreciate all the time and effort that you listen. Hopefully, we're imparting some good knowledge on the industry. Please feel free to reach out to any one of our panelists anytime for any insight that we can share. Otherwise, we thank everybody and have a great day.